Hi, Anshumali. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for joining us. So please continue your presentation. Okay.
Okay. So, hi everybody. This is Anshumali. I'm a voice experience designer with Deutsche Telekom. And previously, I was working on the smart voice, experiences for Samsung's intelligent assistant called Bixby. So today, I will be taking you through a short journey into how you can go about designing for voice. So let's start. Um, I would start with this quote, and this is something that really struck a chord. That most products that will be shipped by 2024 will have an inbuilt voice technology in them. So, what does this mean? It means that there is a huge potential coming up for voice technology, and of course, we as designers have, an opportunity to create an impact there. So, without further ado, let me take you into what is a voice and conversational experience. Today, when you look at many of your smart devices around you, be it your phone, be it your TV, be it your cars, everywhere you will find some sort of embodiment of a voice experience. To talk about voice experiences broadly, we have one type which is a basic voice only interface, which is more of the type where the devices do not have a screen in them, and the other type is a multimodal experience where you have a screen to interact with and speak to the device along with it. So if we think about it a little bit further, voice experiences have been evolving for more than 10 years now. Initially, these were just assistants which would give you some sort of a notification. The next level was about FAQ assistance, where it's more simple command and response type of an assistant. Then we see the level of contextual assistance. These are assistants which understand what the user is talking about, what the user actually means, and then perform the task that the user wants. And then we have personalization on top of it. Now it can, the same assistant can behave differently based on the user that they are talking to. And lastly, you have the autonomous organizations and assistants talking to each other. I'm sure you have seen the example of Google Duplex, where the machine takes over the conversation of doing mundane tasks like maybe booking an appointment, making a reservation, etc. We're quite far from there, but right now I would say we are somewhere here in the level of contextual assistance. And definitely the pandemic that we just saw has helped shake things up a little bit. It has taken voice to a very unprecedented level. Why do I say so? Because our basic need that has arisen from this pandemic is about contactless interactions. We do not want to touch any surface which we know might have a virus or something like that. And that's where voice technology has seen such a huge growth. And now voice technology is being adopted market wide. So what do I mean when I say contextual assistance? These are basically assistants where we understand the context of the user and enable them to complete their task easily. And what information makes up the context of the user? The user profile, their goals, what is the conversation history like, what has the user been asking the assistant to do, and how does the user even respond when the assistant behaves in a certain way, and knowledge of the environment. So knowledge of the environment is pretty a wide topic. So something like, these are basically implied meanings. So if I say how's the weather outside, it implies that the person now is inside a certain space or in their homes. So the all of these information makes up the context of an assistant, and understanding this context to apply and apply that to the responses of the assistant makes up for contextual assistance. So why should we move into designing for these experiences? The first thing is that voice lets you engage with your users at a very personal level. Conversations themselves are very one-on-one or personal interactions, and voice lets you sort of take opportunity of that and design it to make it better, make it more suitable for everyone's needs, and let them do their tasks easily. Voice has seen a high adoption rate, like I was talking before, but it's not just in the personal or personal space or the lifestyle space. It's seeing its expansions onto healthcare, onto banking. So there's a lot of industries which are now trying to adopt voice in their customer experiences. Voice is also great in terms of accessibility. So now, recently, Alexa has developed a model with this company called ITT. I will talk about it a little later, where we have also seen that members of our community who do not who are impaired in their speech or visuals can now be part of the whole tech adoption or the digital transformation of our lives with the use of voice technology. And lastly, voice drives business goals in terms of newer experiences. It allows the brands to be out there in the users lives with another additional touch point, which is voice. Now, if, like I was talking earlier, what do I mean when I say that it is great in terms of accessibility? It embraces diversity. So voice ITT, what it does is, after a certain training period, the Voice ITT app can understand users who are, visually or visual or speech impairments, and understand the way they speak and transform that into normalized speech, and then gives them outputs in terms of responses. Like, if someone's not able to say, turn the light on very clearly. Now there is technology which even enables us to understand what they mean and even complete the task for them. So as you see, there are a lot of implications and uses or applications of voice technology, and we as designers can, of course, add a lot of value into the whole experience design of it. So, what are some principles that you would look at when you're designing for voice? The first one would be designing for context. Of course, we are in the current stage of development of assistance where context is a huge topic of discussion, and most assistants around you are trying to be more and more contextual to understand users and deliver for their needs. So what does context mean? It's basically the way users deliver their speech, their location, their profile, anything that can make up the context of their conversation. So let's take an example. Now, if a user says, "Give me the directions to the Hyde Resort," the system can respond as, "Sure, the directions to the Hyde Resort from home are coming up on your mobile." We now understand that the user has given this utterance from their homes when they don't even mention the location of their home, etc. So they have just said directions to the Hyde Resort, but we know that they're at their home. So we tell them that. And we also give them a small snippet of information which tells them that it'll take you 43 minutes by car. So what is happening here? The intent is basically user wants directions, and the response, it informs the user and orients them to the device of output, which makes sense for the task at hand. Because if they are asking this on their speaker, but when they actually make the move, the mobile phone is something that they will rely upon, and it will we are telling them that their directions are going to come up on their mobile, but we also leave them with a certain bit of information where they can do a certain measure in their minds that, yes, 43 minutes, I have to spend that much time going there. So this is one example of designing for context. The next part is the cooperative principle. So this principle is by this linguist called Polish Grice, and he came up with this quite some time ago. The principle talks about the assumption that participants in a conversation will normally be informative, they'll be truthful, they will be relevant, and they'll be very clear. They will not be ambiguous when they are having a conversation with you. So let's take an example again. So if the user now asks, is the Hyatt Resort open? The system can tell them that the Hyatt Resort is closed at the moment, but it opens in an hour. So what happens is that here that the user wants to know the business hours of the resort. And what do we tell them? We give them a relevant answer that yes, truthfully, we tell them it is closed at the moment, but we also tell them something which can help them plan their next steps, like it opens in an hour. Let's move on to the third example. The third principle is about talking in turns. Conversations like you have all been part of, or like we talk amongst ourselves every day. Conversations are a collaborative exchange. It's not a one-way street. So, taking turns helps us take the conversation forward. We can try to achieve the goal of what we, had in mind when we started the conversation. It helps us reduce the errors because there might be certain misunderstandings which you might be able to clarify when you're taking turns in your conversation, and you also have a chance to repair these conversations. To take an example, if the user now says, book a room at the Hyatt Resort, so the system can say, sure, would you be visiting? Now, this is very important because the user hasn't defined when they would be visiting the resort. And then the user now can repair the conversation and say that, yes, I'll be visiting on the 10th of December. Now, what happens here? The user wants to reserve a place at the resort. Now, what does the response do? It tells the user that they want more information before they can even complete the task. It also gives the user a sense that the system is not making decisions on their behalf, and the system is giving the control to the user to define the terms of the task, like the dates here, for example. And it allows for graceful recovery from errors. The system, if they would assume something and make a booking, that would be a huge pain point for the user journey. But now by asking and confirming, we are allowing for we are designing where we are reducing errors on behalf of the system and even pain point on the user's side. So, along with that, it's very important that you design a persona that your voice assistant should take. Usually, with brands, we go with, what does the brand want to sound like? Does it want to sound very professional? Does it want to sound semi casual? And who is it addressed for? Who's the user group of that brand? And based on all of these criteria and many more, we sort of design the system persona based on which all our responses are then created. It gives us a good benchmark. And lastly, always design for memory, because like meeting one person for the first time and meeting them for the 10th time, you develop a certain relationship and a comfort with them. You do not keep asking the same things again and again. You know their name by the second or third time. You know where they live, so you show all of that in your conversations. Similarly, voice assistants also have a chance to build that sort of a relationship with the user and get much more integrated in their natural way of conversing. So this is a basic, idea about the design principles that you should keep in mind when you're designing for voice. Then let's quickly touch upon few of the fundamentals around multimodal voice experiences. So what are, when we talk about multimodality, why do we want to bring, mixed modalities like, say, touch and voice or gestures and voice? Because the research has shown that about half of the time when users start a conversation with voice, they eventually turn to a screen, phone, or tablet to continue the conversation or their own train of thought. So, to bank upon this, there are certain concepts around multimodality that everyone can use. The first one being a complete hands-free conversation. This is more or less a conversation which happens without any press of buttons, but maybe the responses are shown on a screen or maybe redirected to other devices that the user might have. The second type is a hands-on conversation, where the conversation only starts when the user presses a button and the user must press the button again to respond to the assistant. This is more like the assistant is on call always, but you need to trigger the assistant to even respond to you. So the assumption is that here, this type of interactions always work under the assumption that the user can see their screen. So, and the third type is far field. The best example for this is the TV. And because the TV comes with a huge screen, you also have an opportunity to show them much more information than you could, read out or give them as a dialogue response. So in these type of interactions, the device itself forms the pillar of context. So that depending upon the device's screen size, how far it is from the user, you can define how the visuals should look, whether it makes sense to even speak out the dialogues or should you just show the dialogue response as text on the screen itself, etc. So there are these basic concepts at play, and to build upon these, why do we want to see these multimodal interactions with voice? Because most platforms that we have on voice are right now built to support crossover amongst their devices. So what do I mean? I mean that if you are now talking to your Google Assistant device, speaker device in your home, and you find something which is relevant to you, you might even tell them that send this to me on my mobile, and it'll show up on your mobile. So most of these platforms now support cross-device interactions and flow of their user journeys. They also extend the device capabilities. So you're no longer confined to just watching entertainment content on your TV. You can even ask for the weather if you like it. And the third one is that it embodies different services on multiple devices. So you're no longer constrained to just say booking a cab on your mobile phone. You can even book a cab on your speaker or on your TV, etc. So all these services come up on different devices that the users own. And then we talk about a little bit about the platforms that we have today. Today, we have platforms like the Google's own platform, the Alexa platform, the Bixby platform. These are all different platforms developed to support voice interactions. They each have their own capabilities, and they are of course driven by organizations, but there are also other platforms like this is by the Oval Labs in Stanford. They have this one called the Almond Assistant, which is an completely open source platform where many people can come in, contribute, build the platform together. So you see that there is a lot of interest around this topic, and a lot of people are working on them, whether through organizations or in open source directions. And if I have to just give you a very basic idea on device convergence and within the existing platforms, so if you talk about the Google Assistant now, it supports devices like their TV, their hub, the watch, etc. Where in the watch it's called the Wear OS, and here the actions are being expanded onto different services. So the skills that Google Assistant employs, it's called actions, and actions are being put across different devices, and they have different guidances set out for that in terms of design components. Then we talk about Alexa. Alexa by Amazon, it also supports devices like the TV, clocks, timers, etc. And they have introduced something called the Alexa presentation language, which helps the developers and designers to render visuals onto different Alexa-enabled devices. And lastly, I'll just touch upon Bixby. So Bixby also supports devices like the TV, watch, fridge, etc., more into the consumer lifestyle section. And it has integrated voice into most of these products in their lifestyle portfolio in terms of the Bixby IDE and their different skill SDKs, which are available for different devices. So, with this, I will lastly come on to the topics of ethics. Ethics is a hot topic in conversational AI, and because of its implications, and we as researchers and designers have yet to uncover all sorts of implications. But from what we have seen so far, I'll give you an overview. So, what are ethics? Ethics are basically the moral principles that governs the behavior or actions of an individual or a group, or in our case, our assistants. So, why do we even have to talk about ethics here? Because a harm can be caused, in terms of a prediction. If the assistant predicts something in a wrong way, or it negatively impacts an organization's image or an individual, like maybe at the personal level, it gives a wrong suggestion, prediction, or even triggers a behavior or makes a decision on someone's behalf, and that turns out to be of a negative result, then it's a harm that we call in terms of ethics. These can be on different levels. So just to give you few key concerns around ethics, the first one is about around privacy and surveillance. Of course, nobody wants to be spied upon, and understanding where the data is going, who is using your data, who's even listening to your conversations is very important. And these can have different implications in users' lives, in the brand's images, and even in different social aspects of our lives. So the second one is the manipulation of behavior, maybe making decisions on the user's behalf, or maybe pointing them to a different result than they had originally in mind. And these sort of manipulation might even be in terms of fake news, or even showing the similar sort of data that the user is consuming. And all of the we have all seen implications of these, and these are very, very difficult to control. Then the third one is opacity. Like, how transparent is your system? Where is the data going? Of course, that is around privacy, but where is the data going in terms of where is your data being shared? Is your data going from one organization to something completely unrelated, and you are getting ads based on that? You need to understand why you're even seeing a certain ad. The fourth one is then the bias in decisions. So the training models that go into training for your AI systems, we use large sets of data to train our models, and then for them to reach a certain accuracy. But then if your data set in itself is biased, then the system derives that bias from the data set, and then you get results which might not be very, how do I say, how not be very balanced. And then to fight this bias, it's a huge topic in itself, where you need to be very sure that your data is clean, that your dialogues are not dependent on the data set that you're getting. You have to be able to monitor all of that. The fifth one is accountability. In terms of, if there is a problem in terms of there is a wrong or there is a negative action that was taken. Now, who do we blame? Do we blame the user of the assistant, or do we blame the intelligence that is in the assistant itself for such a action? And that accountability factor is very huge when it comes to maybe autonomous cars. If it falls into an accident or something, who do we blame? Do we blame the passengers? Do we blame the autonomous car systems? That sort of accountability is a huge issue. Again, automation in employment. This is a huge fear that people have, that automation might take away jobs. It's not actually true. What I can tell you is that automation doesn't kill jobs. It kills certain job categories, but of course it opens many more than it kills. So of course there's huge argument around that, but we can talk about it maybe later. And then I come to machine ethics. What tells them that, what gives them that moral compass that, this is true, this is wrong? How do they verify something before they give you those results? So that sort of ethics is something that, a lot of studies have been going into. Then we have the artificial moral assistants. So now you might be able to train assistants with morals that is very cultural dependent. So now it makes sense maybe in the context of a certain cultural community, but in another community, it might not pass that moral bar. So then how do you upgrade your assistants to be fit into different cultural contexts? And lastly, singularity. It's a huge topic of discussion, and we are quite far from there. But this is something that we should always keep in mind, that if we build something which has so much consciousness that it operates at the level of a human being, and then where is the future? If they can build some that sort of intelligence onto the AI itself by the AI's own learning systems, would they become super intelligent? Would they start making decisions that we do not want them to, etc.? I will give you a few examples of such disruptions already. So maybe the Apple Card is a good example. This was developed with Goldman Sachs, and the data sets that they sort of trained into the card system was basically facial recognition software which had trouble identifying women of color, and it was more biased towards Black Americans. This was something that was in the news, and a lot of discussions around this. Of course, there was the Google's algorithm, which labeled gorillas as similar to Black Americans, and that was very racist, and they had to fix it. Another example is where machine bias, when they are doing, say, maybe image reading, they sort of convicted Black individuals more than white individuals, and that was a huge machine bias built into the system because of the databases available and the data sets, how the data spoke. So the machine and the artificial intelligence cannot take such decisions on anyone's behalf, but it is more about the data set that they come across and how they are trained that reflects their outcomes. And lastly, about the testing of autonomous vehicles, where implications on the fatal accidents and what does it mean for autonomous behavior of cars. And lastly, I know I talked about quite a bit of a heavy subject, but then that's an opportunity. Why should you, as a designer, get engaged in the design of AI systems? Because you have the best understanding and ability to empathize with your users and keep them in the foremost priority when you're designing these experiences, and design for humans always. We have the problem solving mindset, which helps us arrive at problems in unique and even much more human ways. Also, the cost of badly designed systems is very high, like you saw in the examples before. I wouldn't say they are badly designed, but I would say that it was a lot of factors around ethics were overlooked, and that's something that we as designers have a lot of potential in bringing into scrutiny. And lastly, this is your chance to impact the future. So with this, I come to an end of my talk today, and thank you. Please feel free to reach out in case you have any questions, and yeah, you can even ask your questions now.
Yes, so you can put up your questions in the chat box right here and we'll be addressing them. So we cannot hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? So yeah, sorry. Anshi, one of the questions I keep getting is like, if I have to be a voice experience designer, first do I have to become a UX designer?
It helps definitely if you have some sort of background into UX. Basics of UX, because of course at the end of the day, voice experiences are an extension of UX. So yes, I would say definitely helps. But it's not necessary. If you have experience in linguistics, if you have experience in sound design, you can definitely move on to this field too and leave your impact here.
Sure. So Dimple, please go through the stream and uh, those
Yeah,
questions.
there is one question people had. They actually wanted to know more about your masterclass. That's coming up.
From about my master's thesis, is it? Okay. So
In the
that
master
was,
class, I think you are.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
from
Okay.
yeah.
I can't really hear you very clearly. That's why I think
Oh,
there is a little lag in what you're.
oh, okay. Is that all right now?
It's, yeah, much more clearer. So, okay, I will just
Okay.
talk. Okay, I will talk about the masterclasses a bit. The masterclass is designed around understanding most of the topics that we talked about today in much more detail, and doing a hands-on project along with it, which can, try to complete it within the stipulated time of the masterclass, and sort of bring you to a level where, if you move on to a company or want to do a voice project of your own, you should be able to do it on your own after that. And we'll also give you experience with a tool called voice flow, and you will use that to create your own prototype and build a complete project which you can add to your portfolio.
That sounds exciting, definitely.
Sure. Dimple, Ashish is asking a question. How does a day in life look like for a voice interaction designer? What do you actually do? What are the tools you use?
Right, very interesting question. So, almost made me think of like a day in a user's journey. But yeah, so I will say that my day usually starts um, with trying to, understand where my projects are, and usually talking to a lot of project managers, and developers who are working on the platform that I'm working on currently, which is called the Magenta Voice Platform, which is being developed by the Deutsche Telekom company. And what we do is that we'll sit down, we will look at maybe some requirements around the platform that needs design input. We will try to look at some features that we want to bring in from a design perspective. We will try to then do sort of a customer journey mapping, or there might be even, discussions around certain dialogues that have been written. Are they good enough? How have they been portrayed? Are they portraying the persona that we want our assistant to have? You will have that sort of discussions sometimes, or else you might even have discussions around uh, how a certain project needs to fit into the timeline of our businesses, or what business goals we are trying to target this year, or how do we align our projects to the business goals. So there are a lot of these discussions that go on. But if you ask me hands-on certain tools that I use, Adobe XD is something that I use very regularly, of course, Sketch, and VoiceFlow is another tool that, we are now in the talks to sort of bring on to our day-to-day usage. And yeah, I mean, there is no dearth of tools. You can definitely explore a lot of voice related tools that are now coming up, and they're quite good. Most of them are pretty good. Adobe XD is really, really good. They have a lot of demo videos, etc. Even VoiceFlow is quite good. And yeah, I think that should answer the question.
Sure.
Perfect. That must have definitely helped. So we have one more question over here, asking about where do you see voice experiences in the future, and what about group discussions? So what are your comments on that, on voice assistants detecting group discussions and things like that?
Right. So, if you ask, I'll just answer them part by part. So, the first thing is about the future of voice. I think there is a huge potential around voice being part of most of our, day-to-day lives in at least the next 5 to 10 years. What do I mean by that? I mean, you will see voice not just in your personal lives or in your personal devices like your phone or your TV, etc. You'll start seeing it in your public spaces. You'll start seeing maybe kiosks that are voice enabled. You might be seeing ATMs that are voice enabled, because these are surfaces that many people touch, and to bring in inclusivity, to bring in a sense of more hygiene, we might be adopting to such systems. And of course, there is another aspect to it where there is research. The research on voice is so upcoming right now that there is talk about even having voice assistants in your public transport systems, voice assistants in maybe your lift operators or building security systems when you're entering offices, etc. So I see the implication of it as very high, because, like your fingerprint, your voice is also a very important biometric in your biometric authorizations, and having bringing that onto different solutions is something that we are going to see very soon. And the next part where we are talking about group discussions, etc., there, I mean, that's been there for, I think, 3 to 4 years now, where voice technology does identify different voices based on their voice print, and it also identifies which direction the voice is coming from, who said what. So yeah, I'm sure if you look up, you will see solutions around this even now.
Okay. So the question from Anjali, I think, how do you set expectations regarding the limitations of a voice assistant?
When you say expectations, I am assuming you mean that the scope of what it's going to do and what it's not going to do. So, in terms of companies, if you talk in terms of, say, Google, you talk in terms of Samsung, these are companies which have sort of opened up voice in the devices that you can think of. So, I would say the limit doesn't. mm, it's not the right time to limit voice technology to certain activities or certain, say, functions. But the limitations come into play when we talk about when you're offering a service to a user on voice on a certain device. What is the most beneficial user journey that makes sense for the user? You will keep user as your benchmark and see what makes sense for them. You will not go about voicifying everything that the service can do or the platform allows you to do, because that doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, users will not use it, and you will bear the costs of it. So you will, of course, keep in mind the user journeys that only make sense in terms of voice, and try to create them in the best way possible.
Okay. So one of the questions I always been facing is like for banking, for example, you have bots, and of course you are already saying that there is research going on to recognize the voice. For example, if I ask my bot, "Hey, what is my amount in my account?" or I transfer this amount to another person. So if the bot is not recognizing my voice, anybody can say that, right? So how the
Right.
privacy is
Yes,
actually
I
in
mean,
place here?
that's a huge problem, and that's why I think banking industry has been sort of not yet there. But PayPal is currently doing a lot of research into trying to bring voice into their PayPal services. So I think that's where the unique ID around voice comes into play, and we have a long way to go in terms of achieving that level of accuracy where your voice is, nobody else can replicate your voice. And that is something that I think most of these banking related and payment related services are going to bank upon, and create their voice experiences based on that. So privacy, even in terms of when you're sharing space with other people and you are creating a voice experience which does an irreparable task. When I say irreparable, what I mean is that you can't take it back. So maybe it's something like a account transfer to be going to the extreme, or it could be something very simple as even sending a text on your behalf. So those actions, before doing those actions, you always need to confirm with the user whether they really want to do it or not. Give them at least 2 3 chances to even take it back if they do not feel confident about it, but at no point should you take away that control from the user.
Okay. So, Dimple, you want to take more questions?
No, I think that's up there. I think most of the questions are pretty simple.
No, there are actually a good number of questions. I don't know whether you are able to see that stream.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't see more questions actually.
Okay, so issue Kardam, I think he's saying that, hi ma'am, how can I approach to design voice chat UI for crucial UIs like travel booking apps?
So I do not know which platform you want to use, but most of these platforms like Google or Bixby or even Amazon has their own design guidelines, which you can look up and you can follow them if you're already in the process of designing voice flow. To use their UI components, you can use the Sketch SDKs or the libraries that they have and design your flow. But if you are in a stage earlier where you're trying to decide which flows to make, I would highly suggest that you create a very subjective customer journey, end-to-end journey, and see where you need certain screens and UI elements, and then based upon that create your own if you are designing it just for an app or something. So there are different approaches that you can take, but keep in mind the customer journey. Always make things that only make sense for that journey. I would not say that um, build a lot of UIs which might later on not be useful. So try with the existing libraries and get into it. Get your hands dirty. Only then you can learn. I mean, how to do it. And I mean, in voice and related experiences, it's more about how much you practice, because you might be figuring out certain things which might be of much more importance, or if you are doing payment or some sort of very confirmative tasks like that, it's very important that you play around with it, see how it goes, and then if you need, create few of your own. And yeah, I would say that would be the
So,
best approach.
if they attend your master class, are they going to able to get this journey maps and hands-on experience? Are you planning
Definitely.
to?
Definitely. That's, I think, the basics that I will be covering. Customer journey comes first. We will, of course, be doing like customer experience blueprint and then trying to derive the customer journey out of it, depending upon the choice of project that you choose and how you want to do. What's your vision around that project. We will try to map it to a blueprint, service blueprint, and then we will try to do a customer journey around it, and only then will you start building it and writing dialogues for it. So we will go through all of that. We will also help you build a persona for your voice, and you will get the whole experience of it.
So, actually, extending to that, Archana was asking, are you also including UX, incorporating UX research as part of your masterclass?
Of course, we will do a bit of a UX research, but it might not be all, primary research, because I don't know how many of you will be able to go out there and, talk to users given the current times. But of course, we will be focusing on how to conduct user research for voice experiences. What are some of the questions you should definitely ask your users, how to even test it with your users going forward. Users will obviously give you the directions that you need to take when you're creating these customer journeys, so their input is very important, and we will definitely do it.
So, Ishwar is asking, it's always a interesting question. What is the scope for a voice experience designer in the Indian market?
I mean, I used to work in India, so I would say that it's huge. Initially, I think around when we started, it was around 5 years back that in Samsung we started talking about voice experiences. But currently, I see a lot more companies coming on board. There is GeoHaptic, there's Flipkart, there are a lot of these startups who are into voice space, and they're doing quite well. It's called Sarathi AI. There's another one called Vernacular.ai. I mean, there is no dearth of experiences and jobs around voice technology currently, and UX designers, of course.
Great. Yeah. And Sachin is asking, this is an interesting question. Would voice and gesture go hand in hand in future?
I think it's already doing so in the gaming experiences. I don't know if you have seen it, but if you look up, there are being voice-only games being developed currently. They're up in the market. People are using them. I think what you are talking about would be first seen in the gaming technology and gaming areas. And yeah, I would definitely say that this is something that we are going to see very soon.
Okay. So Chirag Sharma, I think. So another interesting question. Do you think voice-based experience will ever replace our now on visual interaction experience?
I would not say it will replace because I will just give you a little bit of history around this. So, voice experiences, when they were first thought of, and when this field was very, very new, there was this huge thought of school of thought that said that a voice would have enough stickiness. Voice would be replacing our conventional UI. The visuals might take a background, but we have all seen that that's not the case. The stickiness factor in just voice only experiences is not as high as predicted. And that's why most companies are also looking at multimodal experiences. But you don't need to look around for such a, coming to such a conclusion. You just think about yourself, you as a person. We as human beings, we have five senses. We take in information with all of these five senses to derive at a certain conclusion or make a certain decision. Now, with visuals, you just had one mode of sensory input of information, which was reading, right? Or even visuals or seeing a video or something. So, but then now you have voice technology, which adds on to it, enables your hearing sensory, and you now have two inputs of information which can help you or process information faster, make a decision faster. So you cannot do without one, right? It's the same thing. You get in more information, there are more ways of giving you information, and these all work together fine. So I would see the future as more multimodal than just voice only.
So that's another interesting question, Sachin Gaikwad. What about if some users have a stammering problems, or maybe they pronounce specific words incorrect, and simply, especially they are probably Indian audience with multiple languages.
That's I mean, Indian audience, or any audience where you are not a native speaker of that language that the service is developed on, might face a difficulty, and that's something that is very widely seen in different geographic areas of the world. But I would say that that's something that most technologists in voice are currently working on, and there are solutions already available which take in input in your own native tongue, convert it into a maybe speech which is, or maybe just text. It's called, so the voice interface works in a very simple way. It takes your input as text, as voice, and then converts into you know the text entities that your speech has, and then processes that information to give you an speech output. So understanding users voice is a huge challenge in the complete industry. But if you look at certain examples, like I gave one before, I think it's called voice ITT. If you look them up, they help a lot of speech impaired people who can train Alexa on their own, and it understands them completely and does the tasks that they ask for. So I think the technology itself is progressing so much that speech differences in terms of accents or even impairments will no longer be so much of a challenge in terms of using voice experiences anymore.
Okay. So someone is asking that you're saying that you haven't touched upon linguistics. Would you like to do
Yes.
it in our masterclass, or you want to?
Yes,
Yeah.
linguistics is another huge topic, but today we had just 30 minutes. I am looking forward to touching upon that topic in the masterclass itself because a lot goes, and every assistant that you see out there will have a linguistic related guidelines that they will give out based on the persona of their assistant. So when I talk about persona, linguistics is a huge part and derivative of the persona, that you define for your assistant, and we will be taking that up. And when you write the dialogues for your assistant, when we sit down into making the whole process, into the process of making your assistant or voice experience, we will be writing dialogues and we will be taking care of your persona and we will be looking into linguistics.
Sure. So Satyajit was asking a question. As a designer, do we need to learn supervised and unsupervised learning concept before design for voice assistants?
Not really. It's not very important. But if you are interested and you want to, take these topics up, I mean, there's no harm in that, but it's not required at all.
Okay. Sachin is asking this question, like, when we say we need to consider the most important factor, such as ethics, what is the survey of um, ethics if we keep CX on top of UX? How do we be sure that data wouldn't be manipulated or the design?
So the thing is, in data science, there are a lot of concepts around this. So if you talk to any data scientist currently, they will tell you that no data set is clean. Scientists themselves, they clean the data sets before they even give it out for training. So there is a lot of back-end effort required before anyone can be sure about the ethics. And like I said in my talk, ethics is still developing. It's not at the stage where you can say that we have a complete set of guidelines. If you follow A to Z, your system is going to be the most perfect one. We are still discovering every day new challenges, and everyone's trying to work towards it. So I mean, I'm not sure when you say that what you mean when you say that CX on top of UX, but what I would say is that this is a journey that everyone is in together, and everyone's trying to understand the new challenges that are coming up. There are, of course, ethical laws that we have currently, but these might not be enough once we move a little bit ahead, say 2-3 years. So then there is a constant scrutiny of the ethics laws that we have currently. And the I mean the when I say the whole team, it's not just you as a designer, it's the data scientist who works with you, it's a linguistic UX writer who works with you, it's even the developers who work with you, who bring it all together to sort of make it as non-biased, as ethically strong as possible. And you will be definitely seeing new challenges in it every day. I mean, there are examples of bots being shut down within 2 weeks of them being live. Forget 2 weeks, even 6 hours of them being live, because they really, really challenged a lot of ethics around development of assistance. And yeah, I would say that it's a journey, not something that we have concrete. I can't hear you, Kalathar.
So a
Yeah.
couple of more interesting questions are keep coming. So Harshvi asking, how does one start with voice experience by being a computer science graduate?
I think you have an upper hand. You understand a lot of these, back-end solutions that are being built, and on top of which we build our experiences, right? So there's the platform, and on top of that, we build our experiences, try to build the skills around it. So I think you have a good understanding of how these platforms might work and interact within themselves, and if you have to start with it, I would say that please start with the basics around design and then start with the principles around it. And yeah, of course, the later parts of it, when you're actually making it, you will have to think about how to write dialogues for it and test it, of course. Testing is, I think, very important before you release something in the market.
So after your master class, do you think she can start working in this voice experience
Yeah, definitely.
area?
I think you will have at least one project ready on which you have worked end to end, and this would give you a good foundation to again explore more or even look for a job if you want to.
Yeah. So you already explained a bit, but a question coming from Archana. Can you please share more details about how the masterclass will be organized?
Right. So it's a 5 week course that, initially in the first week, we will look at the introduction, we will look at the nitty gritties of voice. So now we talked about design principles a little bit today. We will go into them into detail. We will go into what constructs a user utterance, what's an intent, how to derive intent, how to even understand which intents to build for. Then we will go in the next week, we will go about defining the customer experience blueprint. We will try to do the user journey around it. Of course, I will try to give you as much as my time as possible around mentorship. If you want one-on-one mentorships around your topics, if you have to discuss few things before you finalize your topic. And in the first week, we will ideate on the topics that you would want to work on, and everyone's going to select their topic. And from the second week onwards, we will start working on them. Create the blueprints, create the journeys, start debating, have roundtable conversations even within our sessions around what makes sense, what does everyone think, trying to understand each other's projects. And of course, in the third one, we will be introducing the prototyping tool, VoiceFlow, to you, and give you a basic demo around how it works, how you as a designer can use it. You can, of course, write your dialogues within it, hear it back, test it in simulations. And fourth and fifth week are basically giving you a little bit more update on the multimodality aspects that we covered today. We will go deeper into the ethics. We will, today we saw certain disruptions. We will also go into solutions. How do companies go about building solutions around ethics? We will discuss all of that. And lastly, in the fifth week, we will prepare completely for your project so that you can hand them over and have a running prototype ready. We will try to do, not try, we will have to do a presentation of your project so that, we will try to maybe even call in Kaladhar here to come up and, look at it. And each of you will be presenting your topics and showing us your design process and your journey, and basically giving a design presentation around your whole process. So that's how we will be concluding our masterclass.
Yeah. Extending that the previous question, there was a question that the price is a little higher side. Is there any discount available? So yes, you guys are going to be given $150. So you'll be effectively paying $299 and inclusive of all taxes. And you don't have to pay again plus 18% GST and all. You don't have to pay. So the code you should use is master, MASTER, and you'll anyway we're going to send that in email so that you will be able to apply that code and register. And we are keeping the seats very limited so that everyone will get one-on-one, mostly like one-on-one kind of interactions, and it will be like a cohort learning. Will be given, make them as multiple groups, smaller groups, and then they work on projects. We're almost ran out of the time, and a lot of appreciations coming. Thank you so much for hosting this and driving
You're
this
welcome.
wonderful and useful session, and truly very informative and interesting session on this topic. Look forward to for a change for sure. And there are actually some more good questions we could not cover because we're already 2 minutes extended. So most probably, I think we should actually keep them as part of FAQs.
Yeah, sure.
As part of your page, we actually please post your questions so that we know she's going to answer them, and we keep them as part of the FAQs on the page. And of course, you should actually cover in your masterclass if there's
Yeah,
anything you
sure.
can answer.
And you can even reach out to me. I think I gave out my email ID earlier, and in case you want, you can reach out and yeah, feel
Yeah.
free.
So yeah, again, thank you for sharing your knowledge on Shumali. Thank you Mo Design for bringing this very informative talk to us for free. Wonderful session. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks
Okay,
Anshumali for your time,
no
and
problem.
she's taking this session from Germany. Thanks a lot for all your efforts, and looking forward to your masterclass.
Yeah,
Okay.
same here.
Thank you.
See you
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
And we'll meet again, maybe most probably next week.
Mhm.
And we have intro to UX design on Monday. If anybody is interested for beginners, please forward them. It's again a free session. It's a interactive workshop for 2 hours. So thank you again, everyone, for all your support. Looking forward to talk to you soon. Bye bye.